Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you today. Now, let me start by asking you a really key question. It's a bit personal as well. How's your soul doing? Now, it's probably not a question you get asked very often, but it's a question we need to answer regularly. How about this one? Are you living authentically? And by that I mean, do you say yes when you actually mean no, either professionally or personally? I know, we've got deep already. Let me introduce Christian. He's our guest on the episode today. He's going to help us become more self-aware and also improve our emotional intelligence. So, bit of background, he's a spiritual teacher, a personal transformation coach. He's a leading voice in the breathwork community, and he's the author of the book, Awakening the Soul of Power. So welcome, Christian de la Huerta.
Thank you so much, Trevor. I'm really honored to be on the show.
No, it's great to have the opportunity to chat with you today. Maybe let's kick off with a little bit of your journey, your background, what's brought you to where you are today and how you help people now.
Yeah, I say that I'm an unlikely person to be talking about personal power and what it means to live a heroic life. I was raised in Cuba the first 10 years of my life, so in a communist totalitarian regime in which power was definitely hierarchical. It was power over. The state told you, pretty much ruled your life. It told you what you were going to study, if you were able to study, and controlled controlled owned you pretty much, and owned your property was really belonged to the state. My family was also very, very Catholic. So again, another very power over hierarchical institution. And when we came to the States, when we immigrated, I was 10, we lived in a small town in Georgia, which didn't take kindly to foreigners, and I was painfully shy. I was okay one-on-one through my adolescence, but if you introduced a third human, I clammed up. To the degree, Trevor, that when I was in high school, I was a good student. I mean, that's one of the things for which I'm grateful of, having been raised in a communist regime. We had a TV, but there was nothing worth watching. So I grew up, I developed a lifelong love affair with books. And grew up reading, and we invented our own games because there were few toys to be had. And for that, I'm really grateful. So because of that, I was a good student. But listen to this, because it's kind of sad and telling. I had a 4.0, which means I had all the highest marks of what you can have in grades here, except for 1B, right? Which is probably an 80% percentile, 80 to 90% percentile in terms of a grading system. And I didn't do this intentionally, but looking back on it, I know that I sabotaged my grade point average because there is no way that I would have been ready then to get up in an auditorium in front of hundreds and hundreds of people and deliver the valedictory speech. There's just no way. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready for that, psychologically or emotionally or in any way. And these days, I speak all over the world. I'm a TEDx speaker. You could say I'm a professional speaker in that I do get paid for speaking here and there. So the message that I talk about and embody is one that we can overcome, right? All of the obstacles, no matter what happened in our past, all of our fears, all our self-sabotaging patterns and behaviors, all that stuff can be healed and transcended and overcome.
Wow, that's giving hope to everybody listening, I'm sure. Absolutely. I know that was very briefly kind of shared, but that spanned quite a bit of time. But it's a key kind of thing to just remember, that from being kind of scared to do a bit of a speech or a talk in front of 2 or 3 other people to then talking to hundreds of people now, what was, I guess, you didn't just read a book and wake up the next morning and everything just fell into place. So what was some of the obstacles then that did you kind of consciously think, right, enough is enough. I want to nail being able to speak kind of in a crowd, or was that kind of a byproduct of dealing with some of the self-limiting, self-sabotaging thoughts that you'd mentioned?
Actually, that came first. The getting over the fear of speaking in public, that came first. And because I always had a sense of mission, like I always had I knew that I had work to do, and I knew that I had a message, and I knew that I was here to help others. And so that became a problem. It's like I knew that I had to get over this fear, and so I signed up, like freshly out of college. I signed up for a course on public speaking, which I hated, but it's really good in terms of how we overcome fear. Because for 14 weeks, I had to get up on every Thursday and give 3 2-minute speeches. Hated it, despised it, dreaded it. By come Monday, I was already losing sleep about it, because I was worried about what I was going to say, and how I was going to land, all the stuff that the mind does, all the futurizing and the self-inflicted mind F that we do on ourselves, the number we do on ourselves. Yeah. But what happened, after halfway through the course, after 7-8 weeks of getting up 3 times a night, it stopped being such a big deal. And so that's how we get through fear. And this I learned after the fact. I kind of just did it unwittingly. But now that I have gone through that process, like whatever we're allowing ourselves to hold ourselves to be held back by, like we tend to think that to be fearless means that we don't feel fear. Yeah. And that's not the case. Being fearless means that we no longer give our power away to our fear. We no longer allow fear to hold us back. So we feel the fear and we do it anyway, which is actually the title of a book I read years later. And this is it in 60 seconds. Right? Imagine like concentric circles. Like this inner circle now represents the comfort zone. Like this is where we're comfortable now being ourselves, relating to others, being in the world. Every time we take a little step, right? Like 1 2-minute speech and another 2-minute speech and another 2-minute speech. If we would do that on whatever it is that we have allowing to be held back, like if we do that once a week, it could be a little baby step, or it could be a bigger leap. At the end of 52 weeks, now our comfort zone is like way out here. Yeah. And so it's as simple, and doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it's as simple as that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a key thing. Like if people don't take anything else out of this conversation, that in itself can change a world. It really can. We have to cooperate with ourselves to break out of the comfort zone, don't we? We have to firstly admit to ourselves that we are feeling more comfortable staying where we are. But I like what you said, because it seems to me like your sense of purpose, your passion, that you've got a message to communicate. Am I right in thinking that helped to kind of draw you through the kind of moments to get to the point where now, talk to hundreds, thousands of people, whatever, without the same fear? So.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's what gets me. That's the motivating and the fuel that allows me to do what I do, and what allows me to put myself outside of my comfort zone, right? Because we know growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. Yeah. And our minds are kind of hardwired to stay comfortable. The ego mind is kind of, it's part of its job is to maintain the status quo, even if that status quo is miserable. It doesn't care, right? It holds on to things that the way they are, even if they suck. Yeah. And so part of what we're talking about is bringing choice back into the equation, that we are the drivers of our lives. We get to make these choices. And so having that sense of mission, you're absolutely right. That's what got me to take that public speaking course, which I hated. That's what gets me to go to the gym, frankly. It's like, I'm not one of those who enjoys working out and exercising. I know people do, some people do. For me, it's like, it's part of my job description, right? It's if I'm going to be seen as a credible messenger for my messenger, I've got to take care of my body, right? Because if I'm teaching about taking care of ourselves in every sense of the word, and fulfilling our potential in every sense of the word, it wouldn't carry the same weight if I let myself go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's key. It's a really good point now. Yeah. So how can we improve our emotional intelligence? Because I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's all wrapped up together, isn't it? Being more self-aware, developing emotional intelligence. So help us understand and kind of improve that.
Yeah, totally. And it's very much connected to this conversation about power. Because most of us have an ambivalent relationship to power. We want it, but we're afraid of it. And then the more that I work with people on this issue, what I think deep down inside we're afraid of is that we might abuse it.
Yeah.
And no wonder. All we got to do is turn on the news on any given day and witness multiple abuses of power. On top of that, add the conditioning. The fact that we've been told that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But what they didn't tell us about Lord Acton's phrase is that he was talking specifically about political power, not interpersonal power. Add to the mix that we've been conditioned also to think that the emotions are weakness, right? It's like reason rules, the emotions are weakness. And not only that, but that we have feminized the emotions, especially for men who we've been told since we were kids, little boys don't cry because that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Because we have turned the feminine into something weaker, which is not.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's the way that we have labeled over the last several thousand years. So that's because of that, we put all that into a mix. That's the reason that we end up saying yes when inside we feel no. That's what we sell out in our power. That's why we sell our powers. We sell out in our power, on our dreams, on our preferences, our boundaries, what works for us, what doesn't work for us, because we're afraid of this, this confrontation. We've been taught that to fear the emotions, to fear conflict. And so we settle for an illusion of security, for a false sense of acceptance, for morsels of pseudo love. So it's not a good strategy. And the thing about the emotions in particular that you're asking about, emotions are not good, they're not bad, they're not strength, they're not weakness, they're energy. Like what used to be spiritual energy, like spiritual teaching that everything is energy, now we know from quantum physics, everything is energy. That means the body. That means the emotions. It's all energy. We know from physics too, energy cannot be destroyed.
Yeah.
So just because we stuff our emotions, because we're afraid of them, doesn't mean they go away. Right? They get lodged in the tissues of our body. And after years and decades and a lifetime of suppressing emotions, we walk around like with a suppressed emotional cauldron with layers upon layers upon layers of repressed emotional crap. And then here we are trying to have a relationship in the present. It's all getting filtered through that lifetime of repressed emotions and unresolved past traumas. Like it boggles my mind how any relationship can work. We haven't been taught how to hold them, how to approach them, and we certainly haven't been taught how to clear ourselves of these emotions. So, first step in this journey towards emotional intelligence is accepting that the emotions are not good, they're not bad. Right? We get to have our emotions and not being had by them, because what happens when we suppress them, they kind of run the show subconsciously, and we suppress, and then we react, because we can't suppress it anymore. And then we cause damage because we're overreacting, and we cause damage to our relationships and make messes that sometimes are, kind of hard to clean up. Or that energy is going to come out one way or another. We suppress it, and it starts showing up in physical symptoms, cancer, heart attacks, ulcers. So this emotional energy thing is not a negotiable thing. It's a mandatory thing. We've got to learn to know what we're feeling and learn how to communicate them. Communicate those emotions in a way that's responsible, that's courageous, and that it's compassionate too, and graceful.
Wow. Absolutely. Yes. I'm thinking through your answer there. Lots of things I want to dig into on that, just that itself. So in lots of ways, then some of the stuff, the sickness that we go through is literally where we haven't processed either trauma or just constantly kind of compromising our values or our opinions, who we are, I guess, is I'm trying to put it into words that I don't know, maybe I'm not doing such a good job of this, but just I know what you're saying. I think it's key that we have to find a way of releasing or communicating emotions before, like you say, they boil over to the point where they're destructive, they ruin relationships, whatever, or internally they ruin our health through in different ways. So
exactly,
how can maybe whether somebody has a really bad temper or not, or whether they never say yes when they mean it, they always kind of take the back foot and just go with whatever's internally they're saying, I don't like this, I don't agree with this, passive aggressive kind of thing, but they're just going to smile. Help us how can we change if we're in either of those scenarios? How can we, is it a case more of becoming self-aware of why we're responding or how we're responding, or is there a magic bullet that we could all get shot with?
There is no magic bullet. That's why this work, it's heroic, right? This book is the first of 3. That the series is calling all heroes. So it talks about what it means to live a heroic life in the 21st century, when we don't have the horse hitched outside and the armors and the demons to slay, except the ones in our own heads. So it's not an easy thing, right? It's a lot easier to go through life numbing out, running away from our emotions, reacting and then regretting, feeling like victims, like we're being done to by life or by whomever, the system or whatever we give our power to. But it's easier, but not fulfilling, right? The path that we're talking about is more demanding. I think it's heroic because it requires the willingness and the courage to look within and to ask the hard questions. Like, why do I do the things I do? What makes me tick? Why do I react to certain things where the same behavior, in your case, it wouldn't push a button? So why does it get me so worked up? What's going on there? Why do we attract certain patterns of behavior, of relationships, that sometimes it feels like this is the same boring play, just with a different actor? But I've been here before. So why do we do the things we do, right? It takes work. It takes energy. It takes courage. Sometimes it takes remembering stuff that's not fun to remember. And so that's why it's heroic. There are many, we and I could spend an hour talking about any one of these subjects because there's so much to say. And I do have a year-long coaching program that gets into all of this in a piecemeal, very interactive manner. But some key points that I would say that are really necessary. One, understanding the ego mind, right? Understanding what that is, because that is the source of all our suffering. If we want to have relationships that work, if we want to have a sense of personal empowerment, if we want to have a life that is filled with meaning, with purpose, that's critical, right? We have to understand how the mind works, how it keeps us in a self-made prison of fear and limitation and self-doubt, so that we can break free from it. And there's, the whole third of the book is about that. Then we have to understand that there's a difference about power, right? That we talk about different kinds of power, so that we get that there is a way that we can step into our own power without abusing it and without being corrupted by it. Right? That there is a way that we can do this in a way that is a match with the good beings that we are at heart. And then there are practical things that we can do to develop and to deepen our self-awareness, because it's a lifelong journey. Yeah. So, for example, meditation. Whether it's a mantra meditation, where just repeating a mantra, or counting your breaths, whatever it is that you do, even if you do it 5 minutes a day, 3 times a week. Start simple, right? Make it doable. But even that, 99% of the time is going to be boring. Like, right, there we are counting the breath or repeating the mantra. Oh, there I go doing my shopping list. Back to the breath, back to the mantra. Oh, there I go doing my to-do list, or thinking about what the argument that I had with my coworker yesterday, or futurizing about what how I'm gonna let them have it when I see them in the office. But most of the time it's that, right? Once in a while we have that moment of connection or bliss or no mind of peace, but those are, not easy to come to. But the benefit of that practice is like, of self-observation. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What kind of emotions are coursing through me? It's like, that's kind of like running the mile or the 10K in preparation for the marathon, right? Or practicing your chords, your piano chords in preparation for the concert. Because it's when the rubber hits the road and we're about to get sucked into that argument that's not going to go well, and we're about to say something that we're then going to regret later, that's when that practice of self-observation comes in handy. It's like, oh, I'm about to go over the waterfall. Let me take a pause. Let me take a breath. Let me buy some time. Let me go walk around the block or sit by a tree or whatever I need to do to calm myself down and recenter myself and choose how I'm gonna respond rather than just react.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. And that's kind of in the workplace, in our businesses, and at home, isn't it? There's that
everywhere.
Works across spheres like that. Particularly before you send that email that
Take a breath. Yeah. Take a breath, wait an hour, then press send.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's key, isn't it? Because like it either helps our relationships or just ruins them. And then we're back to square one. I'm sure there's people listening that are kind of at all stages. They either know, actually, I am out of control, nothing's working, everything I touch kind of gets worse. What do I need to do? And I like the fact, just the very kind of first practical thing is, okay, start to become self-aware of, like, what are the triggers, isn't it? Yes. I'm here again, I'm uptight, whatever. What did it this time? And it's like, okay. And I guess just jotting it down or something, keeping like a diary or something of emotions that's how I would do it. I'd probably use a spreadsheet, but that's just the way I would do it. To just kind of record, okay, every Wednesday after whatever, I always find that I'm, flying off the handle or whatever the scenario would be.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. And then,
noticing the patterns, right? Where do I tend to give away my power? Where do I feel least comfortable with myself and more threatened? Is it an intimate, romantic, sexual relationships, or is it with authority figures? With a boss, a minister, a parental figure. And so when we ask ourselves those questions, then we begin to see the patterns. Yeah. Which is really helpful. Like, so let's use like a basic really example. So say you and I have a mutual friend, Robert, and we both, I have outstanding lunch with him on Tuesdays. You have lunch with him on Wednesdays. Robert inevitably shows up 20 minutes late. And there I am. It's like, I knew it. I knew he was going to show up late. It's like, when am I going to learn? I should have told him a different time. It's like, he's so right. And then all the layers of meaning that we give to it. Like, right, he is so selfish and so inconsiderate. He only cares about his time, doesn't care about my time. And then Robert shows up, and because we hate confrontation, we don't say anything. We put on a fake smile, but then that resentment starts dripping out the side of our mouth with a jab or a sarcastic comment or something like that, like an indirect jab. Whereas your lunch the next day is like, excellent, he's late, I got 20 minutes, I can go on social media, I can return that call, I can go check out the headlines, I can return my email, right? Like, so many different ways of responding to the same situation. Why does it get me so upset? Yeah. Right? So then, all right, if I'm going to be willing to do my work, it's all right, let me get really honest here, let me pull back, zoom out. It's not just about Robert showing up late. It's when anybody shows up late. It evokes the same response in me. And let me zoom out even further. It's not just about being late. It's when anybody cuts me off in conversation, when anybody cuts me off in traffic, right? Same kind of feelings like, oh, as I'm beginning to see, it's a bigger pattern here. And as I look back into my life, I can see the patterns. I can, probably trace it back to something that happened in childhood, probably with our parents. Because what I see is that what I'm really feeling in all those situations underneath my anger, if I scratch underneath the anger, what I'm really feeling is not respected, not seen, not valued, like not loved ultimately, right? So I say it has nothing to do with Robert being late. This is about me and my my unhealed part of me that feels that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of respect, that I'm not worthy of love, like whatever it is in each of our cases. So like if we're willing to do that work and unpack it rather than just reacting or reach the ultimatums like, well, that's it. I'm never having lunch with Robert again. I'm done, right? If we're willing to do that work of self-analysis and self-observation, then I can figure out, wow, I didn't know that I still had that in me, that little part of me that doesn't feel worthy, that doesn't feel good enough. Then I can do something about it, right? It's conscious now. It's not just running me from the subconscious. It's like, now I'm aware of it. Now I can choose. Now I can override it. Now I can realize like, wow, that's a misunderstanding from childhood. So it's so worthwhile. Like being willing to do this work is really, really worthwhile. It's the key to freedom, which is ultimately what we're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. Yeah, otherwise we'll just go around in circles, won't we? We'll repeat the same behaviors, have the same triggers, respond the same way, and then get frustrated or whatever because nothing.
Yes, which is right back. By the way, that's right out of Carl Jung. What you just said, that he said that the psychologist that we have some of our past wounds or blind spots. We're never going to see them, but we can see them in somebody else, so that we attract people into our lives and relationships and such. We create situations subconsciously so that we can see some of these blind spots in ourselves, some of these areas that are in need of healing.
Yeah, this I think is fascinating, isn't it? When we stop and think about ourselves, humans, and how we're wired, and the good results, the bad results. There's so much we still need to learn, but also we need to kind of stop, pause, and think about it, don't we? We need to allow ourselves to think about it, and like you say, bring others in that will help us uncover kind of blind spots that we're just kind of trapped in and don't know about it. So you mentioned that your book is one of 3. So is that, what would we get from book 1, and how long before book 2 comes out?
All right, so book 1 is about power, right? So how do we step into power in a way that's not about hierarchy, control, fear, force, domination? That doesn't require me to push anybody down, to step on them in order to prop myself up and feel powerful. And how do we resolve that ambivalent relationship that we were talking about in the beginning that we have with power? And so the first part of it is understanding the ego mind, which is critical. The rest of the book is about understanding power and our relationship to power. And one of the main aspects of that is that realizing that there are different kinds, right? So there's one power which is what I call worldly power or ego power, egoic power, the way that we relate to power in the world. So, we tend to think of people who have money, people who are famous, people who are part of, are high up in some kind of hierarchy, whether it's a corporate ladder or some religious institution or something. But the thing about all those forms of power is that because they're external, they're outside of us, they're fickle, right? They're here today, gone tomorrow. And we've seen, like with COVID, without minimizing all the tragic aspects of it, it's brought us a lot of opportunities for good if we are willing to look for them. And one of them is, in the tragedy of so many people losing their jobs and have so many companies closing their doors, it has provided the opportunity for many to like, wait a minute, who am I if I'm not that? And what am I going to place my trust in if I'm not going to place it on a corporation or a worldwide economic system that is all illusion, that is all made up, right? What am I going to place trust on? So that's kind of the external power, here today, gone tomorrow. It's also has an agenda, so it's always trying to get something for itself. It's greedy. It believes that there's a limited amount, like its power is a zero-sum game, so that your having power is threatening to me. So I have to make sure that you don't have power. I have to oppress others so that I'm the only one with power. Whereas then there's a different kind of power that I call spiritual power, or soulful power, that is inside each and every one of us. Right? Nobody can give it to us. Nobody can take it away. We are the only ones who can give it away. And that power is humble. It's more about service, about making a difference, and it's no less powerful. In fact, I think it's more powerful. So I think of, for example, and in that humility, it's that power that doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. It just is. So think of Gandhi, think of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. In their simple monastic robes, their sandal feet, you would never know how much power they hold until it's necessary, until it's called for. And with all due respect, Gandhi brought the British Empire to its knees when it was at its global point, maximum influence of power globally, without ever shooting a gun or landing a punch. That's power.
Yeah. It's servant leadership, isn't it, really, for people that are running businesses or just leading yourself well. It really is the focus on me from a selfish perspective. Do I feel I need to push somebody else down in order to get a step up? Or do I change that to there's enough for everybody?
Yes.
That in itself is the core to a lot of responses, isn't it? And if we can reframe stuff,
it's just a misunderstanding. It's like it's a faulty belief. Like, why, if I'm confident in who I am, and if I'm confident in my powers, like I know what works for me, I know what doesn't work for me, I have clear boundaries, and I have the courage, and I can do so, communicate my emotions with courage and compassion, right? Then why would I be threatened by anybody?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, then I'm not threatened by you being in your power. Then I can celebrate you also being in your power, because then we can have an equal relationship, like an equal partnership.
Yeah.
Whether it's business or whether it's personal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's key. I think that's such a key perspective. We are running out of time at the moment, but before we wrap the episode up, tell us a bit more about your coaching program. You mentioned it's kind of like spread over a year. So what would be some of the things people that may be interested or just want to find out more, or what's involved?
Yeah. So I've been doing retreats, like weekend retreats and week-long retreats for 30 years. And COVID, two gifts that COVID gave me was, one, giving me the time. I haven't traveled in a year, so I was able to finish this book. And what I've known I needed to do for years, which was to create online programming, if I wanted to scale and to reach a bigger audience. It's like it forced my hand. I had to pivot, like so many people did, and I had to create the virtual programming. So I'll go back to doing retreats because they're amazing and they're fun and they are life-changing. And if a person who comes to one of my retreats doesn't have a system of support afterwards, if they don't have a practice, if they don't have a system that's going to support them to stay in that expanded state, what happens is, like contraction happens and life has a way of pulling us back. The day-to-day starts pulling us back into our old behavior patterns, and the old voices of fear and self-doubt start creeping up and pulling us down again. And then they have to come to another retreat. This is what I'm loving about the year-long concept. I get to stretch out the teachings over a year. So deliver them piecemeal with, and this is the key, interactivity, right? So a little bit of teaching with a practice designed to integrate those teachings into our lives. Because that's what's going to make the difference. Yeah. Otherwise it stays as like, wow, what a great idea. What a great book. Which is not the point, right? Yeah. The point is not that you like the book. The point is changing your life. and stepping into your power and into your purpose. So that also allows me to do the interactivity and accountability. So coaching calls with me every 2 weeks. In the intervening weeks, the group meets in little power pods of, dyads or triads as another system of accountability, like just keeping us real, keeping us honest, doing what we said we were going to do. And of course, it's all about choice, so there's no pressure, but it's more like inspiration, right? To like helping each other to get free and to step into our power. And the other thing that I'm loving about this year-long concept is that I get to pull from content from all my retreats, from what it means to live heroically, doing relationships consciously, personal empowerment, life purpose, conscious leadership. So I'm actually really excited about that, and they can access information about it on my website, soulfulpower.com.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that sounds really good. It sounds to me, as you're kind of explaining that, it's like you've gradually been preparing and building so much content over the years that you're now kind of consolidating it into one place for the support network. I think that's key, because it's kind of like you say, I listen to a podcast, I go to sleep, I wake up the next day, and it's almost like everything's reset. It's like, well, what was I thinking? What was I listening to? Oh yeah, that. It's getting to the point where you're repetitious about it. You develop habits, don't you? It's the habits that control us, good or bad. Yes. And we can control the habits if we're intentional about it. So that's a really good structure and platform to do it that way. So well done. Good idea. I like that.
Thank you, Trevor.
Anything, just as we wrap this up, anything that I haven't asked you or you wanted to mention to the listeners that we haven't covered?
Oh my God, Trevor, I've loved the conversation. You asked really good questions, really deep questions. You and I could take any one of those and spend an hour talking just about that, just about emotional intelligence or the ego mind that we just scratched the surface of. So I mean, just for now, just get the book. The book really walks you by the hand. And it'll provide critical information about what makes us do the things we do, and so that we can understand the patterns and cut it out, right? Like free ourselves and bring choice back into the equation.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you for sharing. As you say, I think you should definitely come back at some point, because I definitely chat to you some more, dig more into your experiences and your expertise as well. For everybody listening though, it's kind of, you are worth it. So make the effort, put the tools, the resources in your hands, learn about it. If you don't think you're worth it, but you love somebody else, get the book, give it to them, see how it transforms them, and then maybe jump on board, get some yourself. We all are at a point where we can grow and learn and discover more about ourselves and be healthier. I mean, life's short, isn't it? So let's not waste it on bad things that we just carry on and through day to day and week to week. Anyway, enough for now. Thank you, Christian, for everything that you shared. There will be a link to Christian's website below. So click on it, get the book, look into the course, spend a year with Christian off and on. I think accountability, the fact you've got the accountability in it is key, because if you look at the studies where if we hold ourselves accountable, sometimes we do it. If we bring somebody else in, the percentage of success just skyrockets. So, and again, there's no pressure. You don't have to do it, but why wouldn't you at least explore it? So that's enough for me, encouraging everyone to be proactive, to make their lives better. And you get your life better, you'll make those around you's lives better as well. So again, thank you, Christian. Until we have another chat, thank you for sharing today. And for everybody listening, we will catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.